everyone. Welcome back from the weekend. I know that Mondays are rough, but I'm really proud to say that as of right now, we have over half of our class that already finished their lessons for today. So I've been able to catch up on your work, get to see your messages, which I've loved. And now I'm going back to last week to write down and look at comments and more of grading per se. But I hope you had a great weekend with your families. I know I don't know why, but this last weekend was so sweet for me. After coming back from our spring break and not doing anything and then working hard for a week, I know I was exhausted, and I know it's a lot of work, especially in those 3 days in the middle of the week. So I really enjoyed my weekend just hanging around. I've organized my apartment. I can even turn and show you guys. Not that part. I organized all my shelves, and I organized my floor, and I cleaned my carpets. I'm just really proud of myself. I feel like I've been very productive. So I hope you had a great weekend. I know I did. While I'm looking forward to the next weekend, I'm also looking forward to spending this week with you guys, getting back into Despero, and I will let you know that I was able to get into the school today. So I was able to get my lamination sheets, expo markers, highlighters, and our Harry Potter book. So as soon as we're done with Despero, which I know that half of you are on the fence, I know that it's hard without pictures, really. But we'll continue with our Harry Potter, and hopefully this Friday, I'm crossing my fingers for some good weather. If I can, I want to try to drop off some whiteboards for you guys, especially now that we're doing new math. I want you to have a whiteboard at home that you can do some work and show me on the screen. I think that will be very helpful. So I'll just drop that off at the door. I recommend you not touch anything for like 3 days, is what they say. Quarantine it. Like right now, the Harry Potter book is in the car. I'm not going to touch it for 3 days. But I'm really excited. Hopefully I'll get to see you, say hi a little bit. I don't think I can hit all 26 in one day, but I'm excited to get going with that. So without further ado, we'll go back to Despero. Remember, we were in book 3. We've met Miggery Sao. She is 12 years old as of now in the castle. She got sold to Uncle. Uncle gave her clouts on the ear, which means he hit her. She was going pretty deaf, so she screams a lot, and people have to yell at her a lot so that she can hear them. And she wants to become a princess, and she met the P last week. But then she's also getting clouts while she's at the castle because she's not doing her work very well. So things are looking up for Miggery Sao, but I would not say that it's going really, really well. So let's see what she gets into today. It's called To the Dungeon, which does not really sound like a good name for a chapter title for Miggery Sao. But let's cross our fingers that everything will end well here. Chapter 30, To the Dungeon. At the castle, for the first time in her young life, Mig had had enough to eat. And eat she did. She quickly became plump, and then plumper still. She grew rounder and rounder and bigger. Only her head stayed small. Does anybody else feel like that's the story of our quarantine so far? We get plump and plumper because every time is snack time, right? Reader, as the teller of this tale, it is my duty from time to time to utter some hard and rather disagreeable truths. In the spirit of honesty, then, I must inform you that Mig was the tiniest bit lazy. And, too, she was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. That is, she was a bit slow-witted. She's not the smartest girl. Because of these shortcomings, Louise was hard-pressed to find a job that Miggery Sao could effectively perform. In quick succession, Mig failed as a lady-in-waiting. She was caught trying on the gown of a visiting duchess. A seamstress, she sewed the cloak of the riding master to her own frock and ruined both. And as a chambermaid, sent to clean her room, she stood open-mouthed and delighted, admiring the gold walls and floors and tapestries, exclaiming over and over again, "GOR! Ain't it pretty? GOR! Ain't it something then?" And did no cleaning at all. I feel like I might be Miggery Sao. And while Mig was trying and failing at these many domestic chores, other important things were happening in the castle. The rat, in the dungeon below, was pacing and muttering in the darkness, waiting to take his revenge on the princess. And upstairs in the castle, the princess had met a mouse, and the mouse had fallen in love with her. Will there be consequences? You bet. Just as Mig's inability to perform any job well had its consequences, For finally, as a last resort, Louise sent Meg to the kitchen, where Cook had a reputation for dealing effectively with difficult help. In Cook's kitchen, Meg dropped eggshells in the pound cake batter. She scrubbed the kitchen floor with cooking oil instead of cleanser. She sneezed directly on the king's pork chop moments before it was to be served to him. "Of all the good-for-nothings I have encountered," shouted Cook, "surely you are the worst, the most cauliflower-eared, the good-for-nothingest. There is only one place left for you, to the dungeon." Said Meg, cupping a hand around her ear. "You are being sent to the dungeon. You are to take the jailer his noonday meal. That will be your duty from now on." Reader, you must know that the mice at the castle feared the dungeon. Must I tell you that humans feared it too? Certainly it was never far from their thoughts. In the warm months, a foul odor rose out of its dark depths and permeated the whole of the castle. And in the still cold nights of winter, terrible howls issued from the dark place, as if the castle itself were weeping and moaning. "It's only the wind," the people of the castle assured each other. "Nothing but the wind." Many a serving girl had been sent to the dungeon bearing the jailer's meal, only to return white-faced and weeping, hands trembling, teeth chattering, insisting that they would never go back. And worse, there were whispered stories of those servant girls who had been given the job of feeding the jailer, who had gone down the stairs and into the dungeon, and who had never been seen or heard from again. Do you believe that this will be Meg's fate? GOR, I hope not. What kind of a story would this be without Meg? I do love Meg. You want to see Meg? There she is. It says, "There's only one place for you, the dungeon." I like Meg. "Listen, you cauliflower-eared fool," shouted Cook. "This is what you do. You take the tray of food down to the dungeon, and you wait for the old man to eat the food, and then you bring the tray back up. Do you think you can manage that?" I reckon so," said Meg. "I take the old man the tray, and he eats what's on it, and then I bring the tray back up. Empty it would be then. I bring the empty tray back up from the deep downs." "That's right," said Cook. "Seems simple, don't it? But I'm sure you'll find a way to bungle it." Said Meg. "Nothing," said Cook. "Good luck to you. You'll be needing it." She watched as Meg descended the dungeon stairs. They were the very same stairs, reader, that the mouse Despereaux had been pushed down the day before. Unlike the mouse, however, Meg had a light. On the tray with the food, there was a single flickering candle to show her the way. She turned on the stairs and looked back at Cook and smiled. "That cauliflower-eared, good-for-nothing fool," said Cook, shaking her head. "What's to become of someone who goes into the dungeon smiling, I ask you?" Reader, for the answer to Cook's question, you must read on. Chapter 31, A Song in the Dark. Now remember, she's going down into the dungeon with a light. And there's like this separation between the dungeon, which is dark and bad with rats, and it's dark. And then up above in the castle where it's light and golden and shining. And she's taking the light and she's smiling down into the dungeon. I think that the author's trying to show us something there with some symbolism. Chapter 31, A Song in the Dark. The terrible, foul odor of the dungeon did not bother Meg. Perhaps that is because, sometimes, when Uncle was giving her a good clout to the ear, he missed his mark and delivered a good clout to Meg's nose instead. This happened often enough that it interrupted the proper workings of Meg's olfactory senses. And so it was that the overwhelming stench of despair and hopelessness and evil was not at all discernible to her, and she went happily down twisting and turning stairs. "GOR!" she shouted. "Ain't it dark, ain't it?" "Yes, it is, Meg," she answered herself. "But if I was a princess, I would be so glittery, light-like, there wouldn't be a place in the world that was dark to me." At this point, Miggery Sow broke into a little song that went something like this. "I ain't the Princess P, but someday I will be. The P, ha, he, someday I will be." Mig, as you can imagine, wasn't much of a singer, more of a bellower, really. But in her little song there was, to the rightly tuned ear, a certain kind of music. And as Mig went singing down the stairs of the dungeon, there appeared from the shadows a rat, wrapped in a cloak of red, and wearing a spoon on his head. "Yes, yes," whispered the rat, "a lovely song, just the song I've been waiting to hear." And Roscuro quietly fell in step behind Miggery Sow. At the bottom of the stairs, Mig shouted out into the darkness, "GOR, it's me, Miggery Sow! Most calls me Mig, delivering your food. Come and get it, Mr. Deepdowns." She calls the jailer Mr. Deepdowns, and it's capitalized, so that's like his name from Mig. Right there, Mr. Deepdowns. He's in the Deepdowns, not the dungeon, the Deepdowns. There was no response. The dungeon was quiet, but it was not quiet in a good way. It was quiet in an ominous way. It was quiet in the way of small, frightening sounds. Ominous means you get a bad feeling about it, like it's kind of like foreshadowing, like there's something eerie waiting there for you. There was the snail-like slither of water oozing down the walls, and from around a darkened corner there came a low moan of someone in pain. And then, too, there was the noise of the rats going about their business, their sharp nails hitting the stones of the dungeon, and their long tails dragging behind them through the blood and muck. Reader, if you were standing in the dungeon, you would certainly hear all of these disturbing and ominous sounds. If I were standing in the dungeon, I would hear these sounds. If we were standing together in the dungeon, we would hear these sounds, and we would be very frightened. We would cling to each other in our fear. But what did Miggery Sow hear? That's right. Absolutely nothing. And so she was not afraid at all, not in the least. She held the tray up higher, and the candle shed its weak light on the towering pile of spoons and bowls and kettles. "GOR," said Mig. "Look at them things. I ain't never imagined there could be so many spoons in the whole wide world." "There is more to this world than anyone could imagine," said a booming voice from the darkness. "True, true," whispered Roscuro. "The old jailer speaks true." "GOR," said Mig. "Who said that?" And she turned in the direction of the jailer's voice.